For 38 years, I thought I knew what family meant. It meant showing up, being present, accepting the role they'd assigned you. Die 5. Even when it didn't fit. It meant sitting at Thanksgiving dinner while your sister told stories about your failures. While your father compared your life unfavorably to hers. While your mother offered sympathy you didn't need. I thought that was love. Then I walked into my parents' living room and saw my own face staring back at me from their coffee table. Not a photo. A book. The bestseller my mother had been reading since August, highlighting passages, quoting to friends. Written by Dr. Morgan Wells. My pen name. The identity I'd been hiding for 8 years. I'm Leora Bailey, psychology professor. TEDx speaker with over 2 million views. Author of 3 books on family dynamics. And for 8 years I let my family believe I was barely scraping by. Teaching courses for $40,000 a year. Single and struggling, never measuring up to my sister Renee's corporate success. It wasn't an accident. I stopped correcting their assumptions, because being invisible was easier than being questioned. Being dismissed was simpler than being seen. That Thanksgiving, standing in the doorway with cranberry sauce warming in my hands, I had to choose. Keep performing the role they'd assigned me. 5. Or show them who I'd actually been all along. When your own mother has been studying your work for months without recognizing it came from you, that choice becomes impossible to avoid. My family had spent years writing a story about me, the failure, the one who never finished anything. 5, and I'd let them. Because building a career in the shadows felt safer than building one they could judge. But that day, I decided 8 years of hiding was enough. It started the moment I walked through their door that morning. Before we begin, drop a comment for me. Have you ever felt invisible to the people who should know you best? I read everyone. And your perspective might be exactly what someone else needs today. Quick note. Certain details here are fictionalized for storytelling and reflection. What truly matters is the message at the heart of this story. The book sitting on my parents' coffee table was mine. And they had no idea. I froze in the doorway, staring at the pale blue cover. Unseen. When Families Don't Hear You by Dr. Morgan Wells, my pen name. My words. Sticky notes bristled from the edges. And careful pencil marks filled the margins. I'm Leora Bailey, 38 years old. She 5. And for 15 years my family has believed I'm a dropout who never finished anything. The truth is different. 5. I teach psychology at the University of Houston, published 2 best-selling books, and deliver talks millions have watched online. All under a name my family has never connected to me. I moved closer. The margins showed my mother's handwriting, neat and precise. Yellow highlights marked entire paragraphs. Page 47 had 3 exclamation points. You're here. My mother, Velma Bailey, 66. 5. Former church secretary and current keeper of family expectations, appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing her Thanksgiving apron. She smiled, the automatic smile she'd given me since childhood. The turkey's in. I'm so glad you came early. Rennie won't be here until 11. She followed my gaze to the coffee table, and her expression brightened. That book is incredible, isn't it? The author really understands what makes families tick. I've read it twice now. My throat tightened. Have you? Dr. Morgan Wells has such wisdom. I've been recommending it to everyone at church. She picked it up with reverence. This chapter about invisible children. The ones who get overlooked because they don't fit the family narrative. It's like she's describing real people I know. She was describing me, to me. While holding my book. How do you tell your mother she's been reading your book for months when she doesn't even know you're a writer? I opened my mouth. The words wouldn't come. They never did in this house. I'd spent 15 years building a career under another name, precisely because I knew what would happen if I told them. They wouldn't believe me. 5, or worse. They'd make it small, explain it away, fit it into the story they'd already written about who I was. It's good, I managed. You should read it. She set it down carefully. Though I suppose you're busy with your teaching assistant work. Are you still doing that part-time thing? The casual dismissal wrapped in concern. The assumption that at 38, I was still figuring out what real adults had settled years ago. Something like that. She patted my arm. Well, at least you're consistent. That counts for something. She returned to the kitchen. I looked at the open book. Chapter 7. The Invisible Child When Families Don't See You. In the margin. For the 5 in her handwriting. This is so true. For the first time in 15 years I wondered, how much longer could I keep this up? Didn't have to wonder long. My sister arrived at 10:47, 13 minutes early. 5. Because Renee Bailey never missed an opportunity to set the standard. Renee Bailey, 42. My older sister and permanent family favorite, Jew 5. Swept through the front door wearing her trademark expression. The concerned smile she deployed whenever she was about to offer life advice I didn't ask for. Her husband followed with a casserole dish, but it was the woman with them who caught my attention. This is Anouk, Renee announced. 5. My college roommate, Anouk Greer. She does marketing for healthcare companies now. Anouk Greer, 36. Renee's college roommate turned marketing consultant. 5. Followed her inside carrying wine and wearing the easy confidence of someone who'd never had to prove herself to anyone. The living room filled quickly. Relatives emerged from various corners, drawn by Renee's arrival. Aunt Clara, my father's older sister and the family's unofficial journalist, appeared with her usual gift for perfect timing. Leora. She pulled me into a hug. I haven't seen you since last Christmas. What are you up to these days? Still with that university? I opened my mouth, but Renee was faster. Oh, Leora? She's doing her part-time teaching thing. Renee's voice carried that specific blend of affection and pity. You know how she is. Always trying something new. Still figuring it out. Aunt Clara's eyebrows lifted. I thought you were working on a doctorate? That was years ago. Renee laughed. She never finished. We can't all be built for the long haul, right? Some people need more time to find their path. I keep telling her, Vive, consistency is key. Have you ever watched someone rewrite your life story while you stood 3 feet away? And known that correcting them would somehow make you look worse? I could have said something. 5. Could have explained that I teach upper-level psychology courses, that my second book just hit its 50th week on the bestseller list. But standing there with my sister's arm around Aunt Clara's shoulders, both of them looking at me with gentle concern, I knew how it would sound. Defensive, delusional. Something like that, I said. Renee squeezed my shoulder. Don't worry, sweetie. Joof off. You'll find your thing eventually. Across the room, Anouk had been making polite conversation with my mother, but now her head turned sharply at the sound of my name. Her wine glass paused halfway to her lips. She stared at me with an intensity that made my stomach tighten, her brow furrowing, like she was solving a puzzle. Wait, she said, setting down her glass. I'm sorry, did you say your name is Leora Bailey? The way she said it wasn't casual. It was recognition. The kind you get when you're trying to place someone famous. Or someone you knew in a completely different context. I had no idea who she was. 5. But she definitely knew me from somewhere. I didn't wait to find out. The kitchen offered what the living room couldn't. A legitimate reason to look busy and stop being observed. By 12:30, 5. I'd claimed a cutting board and vegetables for the salad. The kitchen smelled like turkey and sage. My mother moved between stove and counter with practiced efficiency. I'm glad you're here early, she said after a few minutes. For 5, I wanted to talk to you about something. I kept my eyes on the carrots. What's that? It's about Renee. She lowered her voice. Psi 5. She's been having some difficulties with expenses. Medical bills, the mortgage. I was wondering if maybe you could help out a little. I set down the knife. Help out how? Just a small loan. I know you don't have much. Sweetheart. But family helps family, and even a little would make a difference. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Mom, what do you think I earn? Ballpark. She hesitated, her hand pausing over the gravy. Well, I don't know exactly. You're doing that adjunct teaching. Part-time. Maybe 30,000? 40 at most? Before I could respond, Renee swept into the kitchen carrying an empty platter. 5, don't be ridiculous, Mom. She set it down hard. She's working part-time, maybe pulling in 25, 30,000 if she's lucky. Don't put that on her. She can barely cover her own rent. $30,000. She'd assigned me a salary that wouldn't cover rent in Houston. Let alone student loans I didn't have, and still thought I should give some away. I picked up the knife again, resuming my chopping with deliberate calm. Renee watched me, then softened her voice into that concerned sister tone. I appreciate the thought, but I'll figure it out. That's what adults do. Some of us had to learn financial responsibility early. The implication hung in the air, unlike you. My mother looked between us, uncomfortable. I just thought, it's fine, Mom. I swept the carrots into the bowl, really. But actually, yes. Let's talk about money tonight. I think it's time we had that conversation as a family. Renee's eyebrows lifted. A conversation about what? Your student loans? Tonight, I repeated, after dinner. I promise we'll discuss money then. The words came out calm, almost pleasant. Neither of them caught the edge underneath. They heard what they expected. A younger sister finally ready to admit she needed help, to ask for advice. Jar 5 to acknowledge what they'd known all along. They had no idea I was giving them a deadline. I set down the knife, rinsed my hands, and checked the clock above the stove. 1:15. Dinner would be served at 1:30. And by 2 o'clock, my father would deliver his annual comparison of his daughters' lives. Perfect timing. 15 minutes later, by 1:30, 15 people surrounded the dining table. My father, Lester Bailey, 68, who'd run Bailey Hardware for 40 years before retiring. 5. Stood at the head with his wineglass raised. He was a man who measured success in decades of consistency and viewed career changes as character flaws. Before we eat, he said, his voice carrying the same authority it had commanded in the store. 5. I want to take a moment to acknowledge what we're grateful for this year. This was the tradition. Every Thanksgiving, the same ritual. He'd go around the table with observations about each person's year, but when it came to his daughters, the comparison was always explicit, always ranked, always painful. Renee, he began, turning to my sister with unmistakable pride, represents everything we hoped for both our girls. Dedication, stability, a life built on solid ground. 20 years in the same career, the same marriage, the same commitment to doing things right. That's character! Renee smiled modestly, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. Around the table, relatives nodded in agreement. Aunt Clara raised her own glass. Then my father turned to me. The shift in his expression was subtle but unmistakable. Pride became sympathy.
5 and Leora.
He paused, searching for the right words. Well, you're still exploring, aren't you? Still trying to figure out where you fit in the world. That's okay too, sweetheart. Everyone moves at their own pace. Some people just need more time. Polite murmurs around the table. A few understanding smiles aimed in my direction. Renee leaned forward slightly. She's always been the dreamer of the family. Always talking about writing books someday. Doing something big. She laughed, warm and indulgent. It's sweet, really. I keep telling her to focus on what's in front of her, but some people prefer the fantasy. It's a specific kind of erasure. Being rewritten in real time by people who think they're being kind. I could have stood up right then. For 5, could have pulled out my phone and shown them my author photo on Amazon, my TEDx talk, my university faculty page. But I'd learned something from years of studying family psychology. Timing matters. Premature revelation gets dismissed as defensiveness. Strategic revelation becomes undeniable. Across the table, Anouk's fork had frozen halfway to her mouth. She was staring at me now. Not even pretending to eat, her expression caught between confusion and something that looked almost like anger on my behalf. My father raised his glass higher. To family. To the blessings of this year. To both my girls exactly as they are. To family, everyone echoed. I raised my glass, took a small sip of wine that tasted like ash, set it down with deliberate care. Then I glanced at my watch. 2:47. Most guests would stay until 4, maybe 4:30 for coffee and dessert. That gave me nearly 2 hours to decide whether this was the year I stopped letting them tell my story for me. Across the table, Anouk was no longer pretending to eat. She was staring directly at me, and this time, I held her gaze. 20 minutes later, I needed air. The back porch was quiet, cold with the late November afternoon, and blessedly empty, until it wasn't. 5 Professor Bailey. The words hit me like cold water. I turned. Anouk stood in the doorway, pulling it closed behind her with careful precision. I sat in your Psychology 301 class, she said. Fall semester 2018. 3rd row, Tuesday-Thursday section. You talked about family systems theory and how children internalize narratives that aren't theirs. I stared at her, my mind racing through faces from that semester, trying to place her among the 100 students I'd taught that year. 5, you wouldn't remember me, she continued. I was one of 90 people in that lecture hall, but I remember you, and I've read both books. Twice. My throat felt tight. Anouk, the second one. She stepped closer, her voice low enough that it wouldn't carry inside. Gay 5 unseen. When families don't hear you. That's the one your mother has in there with all the notes, isn't it? The one she's been reading since August and recommending to everyone at church. I couldn't speak, could only nod. I thought I was wrong at first. When Renee introduced you, I thought it had to be a coincidence. Same name, similar face. But then I heard your voice, and I was sure. And then watching what's been happening all day. She paused, her jaw tight. I kept waiting for you to say something, to correct them. And you just didn't. It's complicated, I know. I wrote my senior thesis on family dynamics and identity suppression. I used your framework. For 15 years, I'd imagined what it would feel like to be seen by someone in that house. I never imagined it would be through my sister's eyes first. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because Renee is my best friend. Has been since college. But what I've watched today isn't friendship to you, it's erasure. She met my eyes directly. Every time someone asked about your life, she answered. Every accomplishment you might have mentioned, she dismissed before you could speak. And your parents let her do it, encouraged it. The accuracy of her observation made my chest ache. So when you're ready, Anouk said quietly. Bo 5, if you need someone to confirm who you actually are, I'm here. I'll tell them. About the class, the books. All of it. I looked back through the glass door. Inside, Renee was laughing at something Aunt Clara said. My father refilled wine glasses. My mother cleared plates with practiced efficiency. The scene looked warm, happy, normal. It was all performance. I'm not going to tell you when, I said, turning back to Anouk. But when I stand up to speak, you'll know. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded once. I'll be ready. She went back inside, leaving me alone on the porch. But for the first time all day, alone didn't feel the same as lonely. I closed the guest bedroom door and pressed my back against it. Downstairs, Renee's lisp sliced through the walls. I had 45 minutes to organize 8 years of proof. My laptop waited on the bed. I opened the folder labeled, Evidence is a word that tasted necessary and bitter. The TEDx thumbnail appeared first. My face frozen mid-gesture. View count at 2.4 million. I delivered that Los Angeles talk on imposter syndrome 6 months ago. The irony wasn't subtle. I clicked play on mute. The woman on screen looked confident, poised. Nothing like the failure Renee had just described to our relatives. I paused at 3 minutes. Deuce, where I discussed family expectations. The audience had laughed. My mother would recognize her own words in that anecdote. The publisher email sat in the next tab. Dear Dr. Bailey, confirming your advance for book 3. $400,000, I'd read it 17 times. My parents assumed I earned $40,000 yearly. The zeros felt obscene by comparison. Speaking engagement photos loaded next. Singapore, London, Chicago. Me before hundreds of people, microphone in hand, professional and credible. The woman in those images had built something real. There's strange power in being underestimated. While my family measured worth in visible markers, Renee's house, her title, her husband's income, I'd created something invisible to them. Every dismissive comment had fueled me. I'd stopped defending myself years ago, stopped explaining. I'd simply worked, published, spoken, built an entire career in the shadows of their assumptions. For 8 years, I'd let them believe I was failing. It had been easier than constant justification, simpler than proving myself at every holiday. But simplicity had a cost, and I'd been paying it in pitying glances and yearly comparison toasts. Maybe you know this feeling. Hiding your real life because revelation feels too complicated. I'm about to show my family everything they missed. If this story resonates, drop a comment below, and let me know what you'd reveal if you had 1 hour to prepare. Remember, this is a dramatized story for entertainment purposes only. My phone buzzed. Choose if like Instagram notification. Renee Bailey tagged you in a post. I opened it already knowing. A hallway selfie from 30 minutes ago. Caption, family time. Even my struggling academic sister made it. I screenshot it instantly. Her public mockery, differed, timstered, and documented, the final piece. Not because I needed it, but because it showed who initiated today's confrontation. When truth emerged, no one could claim I'd been cruel or unprovoked. Renee drew first blood. I arranged everything chronologically. Career timeline, publication dates, 5 speaking fees, social reach, methodical, verified. I'd rehearsed this reveal 100 times, but my hands trembled slightly on the keyboard. The bedside clock read 3:45 p.m. 1 hour until I stopped being the family disappointment and became someone they'd have to reckon with. 1 hour until I stopped hiding. I saved everything to a cloud folder, then composed an email to myself with the subject line, in case I lose my nerve. I wouldn't. But insurance mattered downstairs. Someone called my name. Probably Mom, needing help with dessert, some task befitting my presumed uselessness. I closed the laptop. Not yet. Soon. Mom's voice drifted up. Leora, we're doing dessert. I descended to find the family migrating to the living room, coffee and pie balanced on laps. 5 Dad in his recliner, Renee commanding the sofa, relatives scattered across kitchen chairs. Mom pressed a mug into my hands, coffee bitter and overbrewed, exactly as she'd made it my entire life. By 4:30, Aunt Clara suggested we share favorite family memories. Tradition, she said, though I couldn't recall us ever doing it. Maybe that was the point. Cement the narrative, make Renee's success feel inevitable. Oh, I have the perfect one. Renee set down her pie. 5 remember when Lyora enrolled in that graduate program, psychology. I think? And dropped out halfway through the first semester. My coffee cup paused. I'd never dropped out. My doctoral program had been uninterrupted. 5 years straight, dissertation defended on schedule. But the room leaned in, ready for the story. Dad had to call the dean personally to get them to let her back in, Renee continued, voice rich with sympathy. It was so embarrassing for him. He practically begged them to give her another chance. Dad shifted uncomfortably, but didn't contradict her. He'd never called any dean. 5. And then she dropped out again anyway. Renee laughed, sharp and bright. We love you, Leora, but finishing things has never been your strength. You're more of a dreamer, always starting projects, never seeing them through. The relatives made sympathetic noises. Mom patted my knee. Anouk's face went carefully blank, journalist instincts, screaming something was wrong. But no one else questioned it. It fit the narrative. Leora the failure, Renee the star, a tidy binary that made sense of their world. There's a specific second when you realize you're done. Not angry, not hurt, just finished carrying a story that was never yours. It's not dramatic. No thunderclap or rage. You simply set down your coffee cup, stand up, and decide 15 years is long enough. I set down my coffee cup, stood. The room's attention shifted. That's a wonderful story, Renee, I said, voice steady. Really? I walked to the guest bedroom. Behind me, murmured confusion. Was I upset? Had Renee gone too far? I didn't hurry. I'd waited 8 years. 60 more seconds changed nothing. The laptop sat where I'd left it. I picked it up and returned. The conversation had stalled. Everyone watched me set the laptop on the coffee table, right next to Mom's beloved book, the one with the author's face they'd been too busy to notice. Anouk's eyes met mine. She knew. I opened the laptop. The screen lit up, blue light across the coffee table. On it, frozen mid-gesture on a Los Angeles stage, was my face. Below, 2.4 million views. I reached for Mom's book, turned to the author photo, and set it beside the laptop screen. 2 identical faces. Same woman. Same slight smile. Renee's coffee cup clattered against her saucer. Her name, I said quietly, is Dr. Leora Bailey. That's me. And I have a few corrections to your story. I reached for the HDMI cable and clicked it into place. The living room TV flickered to life with my face 20 times larger than they'd seen at the TEDx stage. Los Angeles. My hands mid-gesture. The title in white, The Invisible Child, Family Dynamics and Identity. Below, Dr. Morgan Wells. Beneath that, glowing, 2.4 million views. I let it play. 30 seconds of my voice discussing children who hide achievements. Because visibility brings pain. The audience on screen laughed. In the living room, silence. I paused it. Picked up Mom's book. The one she'd been reading for months. Opened to the author page. The 5 women on that screen published this book. I said. Both bestsellers. She's delivered talks in 12 countries. Mom's face went pale. Dad's wine glass froze halfway to his mouth. That has to be coincidence, Renee's voice came thin. The name, the face, lots of people look similar. Right, Mom? Anouk stood. It's not coincidence, she said. I sat in Professor Bailey's Psychology 3-1 class at University of Houston, fall 2018. 5. That's her. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was the sound of 15 years of assumptions collapsing at once. Aunt Clara looked from Renee to me to the screen, reconciling 3 versions of reality. The guests shifted, aware they were witnessing something private fracture publicly. Mom reached for the book with shaking hands. She'd highlighted passages. 5 made margin notes. The book had meant something, wisdom about family relationships, about seeing people clearly, instead of through expectation filters. Bar. She opened to the dedication page. I'd written it 2 years ago, wondering if this moment would come. Her voice barely whispered. For those who didn't believe in me, thank you for the motivation. Dad set down his wine glass. It clicked against the side table. Renee's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound. The TEDx video glowed behind me. My frozen face discussing family narratives. The view counter undeniable. The book in Mom's handouts contained theories on parent-child relationships. Insights she'd cherished without knowing they came from me. Dad finally spoke. How long? 8 years, I said. Since my second book published. But you let us think, Mom's voice broke. 5. I let you think what you wanted. I stopped correcting you after the first few years. It was easier. Rennie's voice came sharp, between anger and panic. You lied, no, I said quietly. I stopped trying to be seen. There's a difference. Anouk remained standing. Silent witness. Aunt Clara stared at her coffee. The relatives looked anywhere but at each other. Behind me, a chair scraped backward, the first preparing to leave, already calculating how to tell this story. Mom looked from book to screen to my face, Jinsif hands trembling. Dad's expression shifted from shock to something else, maybe shame. Maybe the slow realization of what 15 years of dismissal cost. I stood there, finally visible. While they tried to reconcile the daughter they'd invented with the woman who'd actually been present all along. The failure who couldn't finish anything had never existed. And the woman who had best-selling author, professor, speaker with millions of views, had been invisible by choice, my choice, until today. Task 6.1 Within 15 minutes they were gone. Aunt Clara first, murmuring about an early morning. Then the cousins, the neighbors. Each exit uncomfortable. Polite excuses masking the truth. No one wanted to stay for the aftermath. The silence after everyone left felt louder than anything that had come before it. Mom stood alone in the living room, still holding my book. The pages worn, edges softened from months of handling. She'd been reading it since August, obvious from the condition. Not just reading, studying. She approached slowly, the book in both hands. I didn't know, she said. Not an apology. Acknowledgement. I've been reading this since August. Highlighting passages, taking notes. The author understands family dynamics in ways I never. Her voice caught. 5. I didn't know it was you. I could have made it easier. Accepted the implicit plea for forgiveness, offered the hug she might want. But I'd spent 8 years making things easier and I was done. That's exactly the problem, Mom. Not that you didn't know, that you never asked. You assumed Renee's story was true without checking with me. She opened to a highlighted passage. Something about parents who mistake silence for contentment. Her finger traced the yellow marker. I thought you were just quiet, reserved. I was hiding in plain sight. There's a difference. What do you want me to say? I wanted you to be curious 8 years ago. To ask why I wouldn't discuss work, what I was doing, whether Renee's version made sense. I gestured at the book. You loved that author's insights. Just not enough to wonder who she was. Recognition isn't the same as understanding. You can see someone clearly and still not know them at all. Mom saw the book. She saw me at holidays, dinners, visits. But she'd never connected them because she'd never questioned the story she'd accepted. We stood in honest discomfort. No hug, no embrace. Just two women looking across a gap that might never close, acknowledging it existed. I should go, I said. She nodded. Didn't ask me to stay. I collected my laptop, my coat, walked to the door. Renee had disappeared upstairs. Dad sat in his study, door closed. They'd process this however they needed. That was no longer my responsibility. In my car, I pulled out my phone and opened the email from my publisher, unanswered for 3 weeks. Subject line: Book 3 launch event confirmation. I typed quickly, before I could reconsider, yes to the launch event in January. One change, use my real name this time. No more Dr. Morgan Wells, just Leora Bailey. Sensed. I sat for a long moment before starting the engine. Watching the house in my rearview mirror, the place that had defined me for 38 years becoming just a building I used to visit. The email showed delivered. In 2 months, I'd stand on a stage under my own name. My mother would either come or she wouldn't. Either way, I'd finally be visible. 2 months after Thanksgiving. I stood on a stage in downtown Houston with my real name projected 20 feet high behind me. No Dr. Morgan Wells, just Leora Bailey. 5s. And for the first time in 15 years, I wasn't afraid of being recognized. The Wortham Theater Center held 200 people. The lights made it hard to see faces beyond the first few rows, which was fine. I'd prepared this speech assuming I'd be alone in all the ways that mattered. For 15 years, I said, voice steady. 5. I published under a pen name. Not because I was ashamed of my work, but because I was afraid of being seen by the people who thought they already knew me. The audience leaned forward. Truth has that effect. Sheen 5. This book is about what happens when families write stories about each other. and what it costs to live inside a narrative that was never yours. I clicked to the next slide. My third book, my first under my real name. That's when I saw her, third row, aisle seat. Mom holding a book, not the new one, but the worn copy of book 2 from the coffee table. She'd come. Without invitation, without warning, she'd chosen to be here. Our eyes met briefly. I didn't stumble. Just continued speaking. Though my words felt different knowing she was listening. Publishing under my real name wasn't about revenge or vindication. 5. It was about deciding that being unseen was more painful than being seen incorrectly. Maybe you've lived in a story someone else wrote about you. For 5, failure, the dreamer, the one who never quite measured up. Maybe you've let that story define you because rewriting it felt impossible. Because the people telling it were family. Because contradiction seemed more complicated than silence. I understand. I lived it for 15 years. I used to think family meant being the person they needed you to be, I said, looking at the third row. I know now it means being seen for who you actually are, or finding people who will. The applause came in waves. Questions followed. Research. Writing process. The name change. I answered each one, aware of Mom still sitting there, still holding that book. Sue 5. When the event ended and the crowd moved toward the signing table, I saw her near the back. She didn't approach. Didn't join the line. Just stood there. And when I looked over, she held up the book, my book, in a small gesture that might have been acknowledgement or goodbye. I nodded. She nodded back. No embrace, no dramatic reconciliation. Just 2 women who'd stopped pretending they knew each other's stories. She left before I finished signing. I watched her go, the book still in her hands, wondering if the highlighted passages would mean something different now that she knew who wrote them. 5. Family used to mean performing an assigned role. Being the daughter they'd decided I was. Now I understood it meant not having to hide who you actually were. And if that wasn't possible with the family you were born into, Vifer, you built your own version elsewhere. Either way, I was finally visible, and that was enough. And to you listening to my story, remember this. Being seen for who you truly are is worth more than comfortable invisibility. Don't make my mistake of hiding for so long. I wasted 8 years being invisible because I thought it was easier. I let my family write a false story about me. And I robbed myself of authentic relationships. The moment I saw my mother reading my book without knowing I wrote it, that's when I realized the cost was too high. Here's what I learned. This wasn't your typical revenge story, though some might see it that way. It was about choosing truth over comfort. When your family has been reading advice you wrote, while simultaneously dismissing you as a failure, visibility becomes non-optional. I believe God put me through this to understand that hiding your gifts doesn't protect you, it diminishes you. 5. The people who truly love you will find a way to see you, and the ones who don't, that's not your failure to carry. 5. This revenge story wasn't about hurting anyone. It was about finally being honest. If you've stayed with me this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever hidden parts of yourself from the people closest to you? Drop a comment below. Your story might help someone else realize they're not alone. If this resonated with you, please share it. And if you enjoy stories like this, real family dynamics and revenge stories. 5. Not your typical grandma revenge tales or those dramatic grandma revenge scenarios. Please subscribe. Thank you for staying until the very end. Dear 5, your time means more than you know. Final note, while certain details have been adjusted for storytelling, the heart of this message, about visibility, family, and being truly seen is what I hope stays with you.